So like I was saying, you will see two files that end in .storyboard, launch screen and main. Launch screen is what appears momentarily before the actual app starts showing. So this is where you will go to launch screen and design the launch screen like mentioned in the slide. Name of the app, by, and then your name and your student number, and the background color you want it to be the color I have given you. And it should match whatever is in your project name, obviously. So how do we do that? While view is selected, in the launch screen you should see this panel, the navigation panel of the view hierarchy. In that, inside the view controller, select the view and make sure you are in launch screen, not in main storyboard, otherwise it will go into the main storyboard. Okay, in the view, go into attributes, and this is where we'll change the color. Many of you might remember we did it last time. Okay, so change the background color to whatever, and to choose a color you can go into custom, and in custom you have various choices. You can go into any of these and choose the color. So I would suggest going into this palette, and red, blue, orange, green should all be there. If you don't like the shade, you can create your own shade of that color from here. Okay, that's how you change the background color. How do we add the name of the app and other things? Label. And how do we get a label? Library of objects. So go ahead and do that. This button here, at the top of the window, there is a button with a square inside a circle. That's your library of objects. So you click on that, and these are all the objects available to you. Right now we are interested in a label. So we'll just bring a label and drop it here. And as soon as you do that, on the right, if you are still in this attribute inspector, the properties of the label can be seen. So we can do things like we can change its alignment to center. So if we change the text or change its font size, it still stays in the center. So design it, to make changes the way you want it to look like. Change the color of the font. And then you can either make copies of this same object and edit it to your liking to change it, or you can drop new labels from the library of objects. I'm just making a copy, and to do that all you have to do is press Alt when you click on it and then drag it. Alt and drag will make a copy of it. Press Alt. When you click on it, first press Alt and then click and then drag. Okay, that makes a copy. Alt and drag. Vikas, right? You just walked in, no? Yeah. Okay. So create a new project, give it, we're going to do a calculator app. And name it like this. First name, last name, and color. I have to assign you a color. Green. So the theme of your app is going to be green. So your launch screen will look green, just like mine here. Okay, at this point, if you are at this point, run the app, and now what should happen is in your simulator, you will see the launch screen come up for a brief moment before. Oh, wow. So let's see it again. I completely missed it. Yeah, it comes for very brief, for a split second in the simulator, and then it becomes white because our main storyboard is still just a white screen. Okay, everybody up to this point? Anybody? Show of hand if you're. Yeah. Yes. Yes, name and student number. I don't have a student number, so I did not write it. Ramneek, right? So we are doing a calculator app. You will want to start a new Xcode project. This part, if you want, you can do later, so you can follow along. We'll start designing the calculator, and I have assigned a color to everyone. Your color is going to be orange. Okay? And this is how you will name your file. Your first name, your last name, and then your color division, orange, and then calculator. And then you can do the rest. You can watch the video for the launch screen. Okay, anybody still? Everybody is up to the point. Okay, good. So let's design the app. We've got to design a calculator. This is our blank slate. What what does a calculator need to be a calculator? A lot of buttons, right? So what type of buttons? Digits. So digits will go from 0 to 9. What else? Operators. So what kind of operators are we talking about here?
Plus, minus, times.
And division. There can be others as well. You can have other operators. But let's stick to that for now. What else?
Clear button. Clear button.
What button?
Clear button.
Clear. What else? Backspace. Okay.
Most important, equal.
Equal. Okay. What else?
A dot maybe.
Dot. Yes, you have something? Anything else you can think of?
Text view.
Text view to display all of that, right? Yeah, so the buttons and then a text view. So these are all the buttons. Any other buttons we are missing? How about something to change the sign, plus minus? There could be other things, square roots, but calculators come with various functionalities. But what we want is something basic, maybe something like this. So that's what we want. And what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to enter a number, then choose an operator, and enter another number and press equal to or press an operator, and something should happen. That's our basic functionality. So this is what we can put in here. We can put a bunch of buttons in this area. And then we can have a display of the number that is being entered and the result and all that. And also, again, there are various ways of doing it. For example, some of the calculator apps, they keep showing as you're typing. If you type 2 plus 3 plus 4, it will show there 2 plus 3 plus 4. Whereas old style calculators, if you typed 2 and then pressed plus and then pressed 3, it would show 3 now. So that's what we will do. We will not try to type an equation and try to parse it. That would be a more complex endeavor than we want to engage in right now. So we will develop an equivalent of an old style simple calculator. So this is going to be our view. Swift was basically designed with model view controller schemes in mind. So there is a view controller, and there is a model. So we've got our view. We'll need a model and a controller. So like last time we saw that when we create any of these projects, even today you will see that there is a class called view controller. That is where we connect the view to the controller, and it deals with all the events that happen on the view. The button is touched or whatever it is, any of those. And we will also need to design a model, which we will not do right now, which keeps track of what is going on in the calculator. When you enter a number, the model knows that a number was entered, an operator was pressed, which operator was pressed, and then what else happens. All of those things will happen in the model. And there is a state of the model which this thing will keep on displaying. So if the model has just finished calculating and it has a result, it will show the result. If you said 2 plus 3 and then press equal to, it will show 5. Things like that. So we'll do all of that. Today what we will start with is doing the graphical design of these buttons. So what we need is a whole lot of buttons to be added to this. So now what you need to do is very important, make sure that you go to your main storyboard. It should look like this, completely blank. And we need a grid of buttons, right? We need digits. So we've got 10 of these. We've got 4 of these. 14, 15. If we want a backspace, then there is one of this. 1, 2, 3, 4 plus 4, 8 plus and 18. So maybe we can target like 20 buttons, make a grid of 4 by 5 and arrange it so that we can fit all of these in. So here I know from my past experience that a lot of the students are way more capable in designing beautiful interfaces than I am. And if you are one of those, please don't be trying to follow what I'm doing. Design something nice. And if you're happy following along, that's fine too. So what we need are buttons. So let's start with a button here. Okay, and what I will do is we'll have 4 by 5 grid. So I'm going to just make copy of this button. So you can press Alt when you click on it and then just drag it and it makes a copy. Okay. There is a way to make these buttons, all of them the same size, etc. So we'll do that in one shot. So what you can do is after you have 4 buttons, you can select all of them and then press Alt and make a copy of 4 buttons at a time. So you will get 20 buttons. Now what we'll do is we'll manipulate these things a bit. I will change the text from buttons to something same. While all of them are selected, if you change the text, it applies to all the buttons. So here in the title, if I change from the text was originally it said button. Oops. I think my Xcode just crashed. Okay, so when all of them are selected, it says button. I'll change this to X for now. Again. No. So now all of them say X, and I'm going to increase its font size to something that is more reasonable and easier to read. And now you can, lay out your buttons. I'm just going to do the numbers first. And we'll add the operators as well. Okay, so we got the numbers, the decimal point, and the operators plus minus. We can add the clear. Clear is generally the top left, so that's where I will put it. And you have two spare buttons. You can choose what you want. I'm going to put square and square root here. And if you need, and this happens from time to time, I want to use a character. I don't want to use an image, so I just Google square root Unicode so that I can copy it from here and paste it there in the button. Okay, what are we missing at this point? So we've got the buttons. The text field. So if you're done with the buttons, you can add the text field. We'll go back to the library of objects and we'll type text. And you'll see two options, text field and text view. So text view is a multi-line display. It's kind of like text area in HTML versus an input text box. So we don't want a text view, we just want a text field. So we'll drag that over here and place it somewhere. Make it the same width as, and that's the text field. I'm going to change its background. Figure out where. So this is our text field. You can see what the text looks like. If you just enter a 0, it will show a 0 and it is to the left. We can increase its size as well because we have lots of space. And what we want is, we normally you would not want it to be left aligned, you would want it to be right aligned, as in any calculator. And generally also it shows with a dot, 0 dot. Okay, anybody still working on this part? So you copy it from there, press Command C. Command in Mac, everything that is in Windows with control, in Mac is with command. So we'll do Command V. There. Yeah, those of you who are new to Mac, remember that to copy text, you do Command instead of Control C, Command C, and then Command V to paste it. The command is a key right next to the space bar on your keyboard. Okay. Everybody, anybody still working on getting the buttons and the text field? Okay. Do you want to know how to get the text field? Is that what you're waiting for? So to get the text field, I'll show again. Click on this circle square button, this square in a circle. This is the library of objects, and search for text. And then drag and drop the text field here. I have already got it. And once you do that, you can resize. You can change its size, make it bigger, make its font bigger, and make it right aligned. So this is what we did. We designed an interface and added the buttons and the text field. What is our next step? The next step is to connect these components that we have added to the view controller. So anybody remember what an IB outlet is from last class? Yes. No. So what did we do in order to be able to change the text of the label last week? We did an operation with our mouse. We did a control drag into the view controller, and we created what was called an outlet, IB outlet. So this is last week's code. You will remember that in our view controller, we had all of these things, references to the label, to the text field, etc., right? To be able to work with them. These are called IB outlets, interface board outlets. And this is a reference in the Swift code to those objects. So what we need is all these buttons, text field, etc. we have. We need to be able to work with them. We need to know when a button is touched. And we need to be able to change the text in that. So for the buttons, we need to be able to listen to the events. And for that, we had what we called an IB action. We created a function. This is what happened when the button was clicked. So when the change the color button, so this app, if I were to run it, just to jog our memories, this was the app, and this change color, whenever it was clicked, it would change. I mean, the default was white. If I were to enter red and say change color, it would change this to red and this text to red. So to listen to this touch event, that this button was activated, it was clicked, touched, we created this function. And how did we do it? We did a control drag, or in your case right click and drag from the button. So that's what we'll do. We'll repeat all of those things, and since I said we are going to be learning by doing, there are many things you will do repeatedly until you become masters at it. So that's what we are going to do. So let's go back to our calculator here. Now, while you are in the main storyboard and you have this visible to you, you want to go and click on this two intersecting circles, this button on the top here of the window, it says show the assistant editor. What the assistant editor does is, this is a view. It has an associated view controller class. When you click that button, it shows them side by side. And how does it know which class to show? When this project was created by Xcode for us, it happened in the background, and you can check it here. If you go here to the view controller, the top level object inside the scene, and go to, on the right panel, you have various options. By default, right now, whatever was selected is shown again, is the attributes inspector. But I want to see the identity. And if I go there, it will say that this view controller is linked to this class, the class called view controller. So this view controller.swift. And while I have this selected, if I click this assistant editor button, it should open up another window with the view controller, the class that Xcode created for us. And this is the class where we will be creating all the functionality related to this. Okay, and this is a point where I want to introduce a new concept to you. Well, the concept is not new, I'm sure you're familiar with it, but in Swift there is a particular way of doing it. Commenting. So Swift has some certain keywords. So if you add a comment like this and call it outlets, this is where we'll place our outlets. Okay, and let's create an outlet to this text field. Remember how we did that? Right click drag from the text field to this blank area. So make sure you have a couple of blank lines here after the comment, and then you right click and drag from here to just below that comment, and the caption in black reads insert outlet action or outlet collection. So all we want is an outlet right now, and all those things you can actually change from here, but we're not going to. And we'll give it a name. I'm going to call it number display. And another thing, how we name our variables and classes, etc. You will notice that I chose to start the variable name with a lowercase n. And then each individual word will get capitalized. This you must be familiar with. So weak does automatic garbage collection. It's a very good question. We talked about it a bit last time. What weak does is it tells Swift that do a reference count on this object, and when the reference count goes to 0, dispose of the memory it is using. So that's what weak does. A strong means just keep it. So generally speaking, we just want a weak connection. So if you say connect there after giving the name, you will see that it will read IB outlet weak var the name you have given and text field. And this is what I was talking about, variable names. So last time somebody mentioned camel case. You have all heard of that camel case? And this is in particular, in this instance, it's more specific, it's lower camel case. What that means is that the first letter is lowercase. And if instead of number display, let's say if I were to call it number display text field, then the T and F would become capital in text and field, the first letters. So that's generally a good convention to follow. It keeps your code very readable instead of calling it N or something like that, that later on in the code you're wondering what is this N. For classes, we use the same thing, but in the case of classes, we use upper camel case. So the first letter is also capital, name of class. But this was automatically created. We did not do it. When we create our own class, we will follow that, which we will for the model. Okay, so this is where we will display the number, and we need to listen to what events of what components. Sorry, what was that? Of the buttons, right? We need to listen to whatever is happening to the button. Somebody is going to be using the calculator, they're going to touch the buttons. Yes, we have to create an action, and this is how we will do it. So now, okay, before I do that, let's see what this mark it did. So what happens is, when you are editing a file in Swift, it creates, see, this is the file name, and then these are the breadcrumbs it creates. And all the sections you create like this created a section, mark, colon, whatever is the comment here goes there. So if you comment your code, if you have a very long file and you have divided it into properly into, outlets, actions, and all the other things, then you can quickly jump to those from here. So these are the outlets, right? And this. And then here I could say functions. So this now, if I go there, you will see that it outlets, it is like this. And this hyphen, it creates a separator before the section. It creates a new section. If I remove this from the functions, you will see what happens. So Swift allows you to do this kind of commenting in your code, which can be very useful to navigate the code. And commenting is a good idea in general.
How do we bring that multiple windows together?
Okay, so to do that, so what happened is, this is the assistant editor, and how you do it is you start with your storyboard. Okay, choose the controller on the navigation, choose the controller that you want to view the class for it. Each controller, view controller. See, this is called a view controller scene. When we have apps with multiple view controllers, you will see there are many of these can be on one page, and each one of them will have a class associated with it. So you select this and then you click this assistant editor button. Show the assistant editor, this one. And when you click that, you should see side by side the two things. And you can, make this hierarchy disappear by clicking this button at the bottom here, so that you see this. I have to use a very large font so that you can see it, but in your case, you may be able to see everything without any issues, even at a. Okay, now let's start doing the buttons. Let's create actions. How will we do that? Yes, let's create a section here in the comments, IB actions. And what we will do is we will start from any one button, okay? And do a right click and drag here under this comment.
Do you have to create an XSR after the override function?
Yes,
Or we can create the action at the like top of the override function?
you can do that before also, before the view did load. You're talking about this, right?
Yeah,
This function here.
yeah, this one.
So generally, because this is inheriting from a view controller and this is a very important function, we leave it at the top. Okay, so this is the convention. We create the outlets at the top and then this function whatever was there and then our own functions. Okay, it really doesn't matter though. In the end, it's the order is not important. Okay, so let's create a one IB action, and what we'll do is let's give it a name. I'm going to call it button touched, and you want to make sure, examine this box that popped up. So it is an action, the name, and type is the type of item which is going to invoke this action. So you want to change that to UI button, and the event you can leave it as touch up inside, and arguments sender leave it as it is, and then say connect. So it will create one IB action function called button touched, and what we will do is we'll reuse it for all the buttons. So Brandon, I see that you're creating for every button. We'll just reuse it for one. This is another way of doing it. We could create one IB action for each button, but Swift allows us to invoke the same function, and then we can use a switch case or something inside to determine which button was pressed and take the appropriate action. Another way is what you're doing. You create an action for each button. That is also fine, but it's just then you have more functions. It's okay. Either way is fine. I just wanted to show you that way of doing it so that this concept also becomes clear. So how do we do that? Once you have this one, okay, everybody got this one, IB action button touched. Okay, now what you do is if you take your mouse to this line, to the circle, it becomes a plus. Then what you do is the plus, you drag it to any other button and it will associate it with that as well. So you keep doing that. And then whenever you bring your mouse back to this circle, it shows you which buttons are connected. See, those four got highlighted. So that is what we will do, one by one. Unfortunately, there is no way of doing it collectively. You can't select all of them and do this. It does not work. Yeah. Okay. So if I check now, I'll see that all my buttons are linked to this. And what we will do is, as before, we'll just print here button touched. What else can we print right now? This, if we at this point, if we run our code, let's do that. Let's run it now. Before we go too far ahead, let's run it. In case there are any problems, they'll be easier to fix now. So this is what we did. We just added a statement inside the function called button touched. And when I click on any of these, I should see that message down here, button touched. So now we are listening to the buttons. Yes. So hide this white area. Click on this. Okay. Now take your mouse to that circle. See, it is connected only to the C. Now drag it to the next one and then the next one. One by one connect it to all of them. So now you'll see it is connected to two. Okay, anybody else need help with connecting the buttons to the function, all the buttons? No, we've connected all of them. So what you do is, on this IB action, if you take your mouse, you will see mine is connected to all of them. If yours is highlighting only one, it means it's connected to only one. Then what you do is, when your mouse is on this, it becomes a plus. So you drag that plus, there is a line that will come up to the next button, to the next, like that. You connect all the buttons. Okay? And when you run this, you should see any button you touch should produce this message, button touched. Okay, so those of you who are up to this point, can you print which button was clicked? You are getting an argument called sender. So this is the object. Whichever button is clicked is being passed as an object. So how do we extract the text of the? So try to do that. Good, good to know. So where we were before the class, we had done the design of the graphical design of the calculator, and we had connected it to the view controller, and we had this function which was listening to all the buttons and printing this message, button touched. So anybody figured out how to get the which button was touched? What do we do? Sender dot current title. So let me just print it here, sender dot current title. So I now want to see both button touched and sender dot current title. When I touch any buttons, 8, 4, 6, and here it is saying optional. This is a part of your homework assignment to read the chapter on optionals and non-optionals. So what this means, I'll give you a brief introduction to what this optional business is. In Swift, when you declare a variable, let's say I say variable on X, it can, by the way it is declared in a class, inside a class, it can either be forced to always have a value. Let's say this is supposedly a string and I call it A, B, C, D, whatever, right? So this has a value. Now, how many of you are familiar with the concept of null in Java or JavaScript? Everybody, I suppose. So when a variable is null, it means it has not been defined. So in Swift, there are three types of variables. One is when you declare it gets defined. So this will never be null because it has been defined. The other is I could declare it as variable and the type, right? String. This is how we define. And I can say X and then I can say question mark. What it's telling Swift is that this variable can be null at times. It does not always have to have a value. And in Swift, null is called nil, just minor language difference. So that's what is happening here when I put a question mark. So optional variables which can be nil, if you try to print them, use them, you will get this kind of a message that it's an optional. So to avoid this message, I can do various things. One of them is to put an exclamation point after this. So here by doing that, what I'm telling the compiler is that this variable, although it can be nil by definition, it was defined like this. I'm saying it is not nil. Unwrap it. That's called unwrapping in Swift. So basically, I'm telling the compiler that I know this is not nil, so that warning and that optional text, etc., will go away. So that is how you can unwrap variables which are defined as optionals. So let's run it now and see what happens when we touch the buttons. See, now that optional part went away because I'm saying it's not nil. Now by chance, if I am wrong, if I am not right and this comes in as nil, then the app is going to crash. So this is available to you to use as and when you need it. In this case, we have connected all the buttons ourselves. We know that each and every button has a title. None of them is blank title. So we just force unwrap it. And you will read more about this when you read the chapter on optionals. So let's also here, let me define it as uh, we'll assign this same sender.current title to a variable name and then we'll use it to see what is going on. What's a good variable name? Let's call it button text is equal to sender dot current title and we'll force unwrap it, meaning we are saying this is not nil. Okay, so now we are getting into the more interesting things, the mechanics of how all of this is going to work. We'll start with the simplest case. Let's say how we'll deal with the digits. So we'll do the programming little by little. We'll first see what we are going to do with the digits. And then we'll add all the buttons until we are doing everything that we have designed in this palette here. So when a number is pressed, let's say any number, let's pick a number, let's say 1 is pressed. What happens? What will happen to the keyboard, to the display here? So I pressed this button, right? It says 1. And this is what it looked like before, and then I touched this. What do I expect to happen as the user of the app? 1 should be displayed on the 1 should appear here, right? So this 0 should become 1. Okay. Now if I press 1 again without pressing any other keys between the two, then what happens? It should put an extra 1. So this should become 1, 1. Like that, right? And if you press any other number, it should keep on appending those numbers. So that's our first step, how to build a number. So the starting point is it displayed a 0 and then we got 1 and then we got a 1, 1. And if we were to press 2 after that, we will get 1, 1, 2. Okay? So now it is possible. Let's define two things here. Let's define that a state of the calculator which tells us, okay, let's come to that later. Let's do the number. Let's just display the number. So we'll deal with the case when numbers are being pressed, okay? And how we are going to do it, what is the best way of doing it? All of this. We'll be dealing with different cases. That's a hint. Switch. We'll put a switch on this button text, and then we'll do a case for each uh, each of the buttons. Although there is an advantage here because some of them have the same effect, like all the numbers, we'll be able to deal with them in one single case. So let's do a switch. So case, and this is where we can put multiple. So from 0 to 9. And consecutive statements. There is a problem with my syntax here. So there are minor differences between Swift and other languages how switch case. The syntax is switch statement. Okay, so this is how it does. We can have multiple values. So all it wants is values separated by commas in the case. So we have a switch on whatever the variable name is, and then all these values. Okay, now this the message here we are getting is switch must be exhaustive. Basically, a switch statement must have always a default case. Otherwise, this error will come. Switch must be exhaustive. So that has gone away. And both of our statements here are missing something executable. Must be separated by. Okay. Now, if it is a number that is pressed, just to quieten these warnings, I'm just going to print the button text so these warnings they disappear. Okay, must have at least one executable. Why am I still getting? No. Expected expression.
I think your colon should be after the 9 and not after the word case.
Yes, you're right. Is that Tyler?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got this much. Now, what do we want to do? We have a text field here that we have created an IB outlet to, and that's where the number is going, right? This number display. So we want to get whatever is the current number in there and append whatever the new digit was pressed. And if it was 0, we'll ignore that and we'll just replace it. So in here, over here in this function, what we also need is we need to declare a variable, and we'll be changing it. So we'll declare it as a var, variable, instead of a let. Was this in the quiz? What is a let? Why? What's the difference between let and var? Let is a constant, its value cannot be changed. If you try to change it, it will give an error, and var is something you can change. Okay. Current value is equal to, we'll get the text from this number display. Okay, and we'll also unwrap it, force unwrap it, because it is an optional, otherwise it will keep on complaining. So current value will give us whatever is currently in the text field. So if it is a 0, what do we do? Just replace, right? And if it is anything other than 0 in the current value, then we append. So let's do that. If current value is 0, have I got a dot in here? I have, right? So we'll make our life a little bit easier. I'm going to get rid of the dot from this, but the default, just say 0. We can add that complexity later on, but right now let's deal with it just being 0. So if the current value is 0, then current value will change it to whatever is the button text. Else, we'll say current value is equal to current value, and the in Swift concatenation is really easy. You just put a plus. Okay, and now since we have a new current value, we'll assign it back to the number display. We'll add it to the number display.text. Basically, we'll add this line to our code, and let's see what happens now. Okay, so at this point, oh yeah, let me show you that. So there is something neat about this. You may have seen it with other editors also. if you want to know where the corresponding opening bracket for one of these is, so if you just click after it, you will see that a highlight will appear. This thing will become in yellow for a moment. It shows you where it is. So if you are having problems like mismatching brackets, you can do this. You click there and it shows you where, or even after the, if you click after the opening bracket, it shows you where it is closing. So you can diagnose and fix those kind of things. Are you able to get it? Okay. So everybody, anybody still not getting this part here, that you're okay? What is happening?